Hello and welcome to Dojo Live this Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. My name is Kim Lantis and it's my pleasure to be hosting today. I'd like to welcome my guest, Custódio Barreiros. Hey, Custódio.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are.
I love it. Custódio, you are the founder and CEO of EIP MGT, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to be speaking about emerging international hotel markets, what you see in the next few years, what's going to be big, and of course, their unique cultural nuances. And we talked about this prior to today's show because we thought this is super important because sometimes unknowingly culture can make or break business or guest experience. So I'm super excited to dive into that. But before we do, I would like to start by having you share a bit about your background, what inspired you to launch EIP MGT, and of course, your journey in hospitality, the industry, what it's been like. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, Kim, and team of dojo.live, because I think there's other characters around that I've met in the last 2 weeks. So thank you very much, everyone. And everyone, obviously, who's taken the time to listen to us. Like a good son of an immigrant family in London, I was forced to work in hospitality for my sins. I made the mistake of asking my father for money. He asked me if I had a pair of black trousers and a white shirt, and he needed someone to help him. And true story, I've got friends who are still connections and colleagues and former clients who worked with me and still now on that party was working at the Lanesborough Hotel. But I was in fact really born inside the Churchill Hotel. Both my parents were hoteliers. As many immigrants in the 70s, 1970s, they arrived in London. My mother was part of the housekeeping team. My father at the time, food and beverage then. He then moved on and became part of the concierge team and so on, the Lanesborough. He worked all along Park Lane, so he's kind of followed. I tried to run away from the industry, which I now love and adore. Because
tried is the key word.
The key word, there's never let go, obviously. I tried because I saw, admittedly, like any teenager, when you see your parents do the amount of shift work, 2 jobs, and everything, you don't want to do that. And like good Portuguese, Iberian, Latin parents, they were very much trying to push you to do, you get your degree, get university, and I did, of course, and then just fell back into it, which I gladly did. One of the wonderful things is the people you meet along the way. So from working in small private groups to big brands, rebrands, and so on, I never had a desk job. Even sitting down here today feels very weird at my desk in my home office doing this, because normally I'm traveling or I'm in a client's office area, a hotel. The back of house is what I like. I love operations. I love the heartbeat and soul. I've done sales. I've worked for suppliers with Amadeus and Burr Street, and the last 18 months with Alliance on a wonderful project. Always related to that element. I know you've got some guests coming your way, which can tell you a little bit more about great friends as well. But that's what I did. EIP stands for Everything is Possible, something my father used to say very often. Anything is possible just arrives. Everything is possible comes via hard work. And I think that's what we all do in hospitality. I think some of the most wonderful experience a human being has in a hotel are delivered by people that unfortunately can't afford to stay in those properties. However, they'll do whatever they can. The same way they take care of their family, they deliver an experience. And that's where it will come from. Through hard work, you can achieve the possible. So the launch was not just in Austria, as where I'm located now. It was actually in the UK. The company name started years ago. It's been in the back burner in one of the various notepads I have. And the opportunity came a few years back with a client of mine asking me for a favor. Not a bad favor, not a discount. Surprisingly, a client buying and asking him a discount, which is always astonishing to any salesperson listening to us. But it was very much the kind of, how do I connect all of this internally? I need someone to support me. I want to use the software. I can see the possibility. Because in our industry, we find that the buyer of a product to enhance a guest journey, to deliver anything at all, has to convince a full list of stakeholders below him, and of course above him or her, to sign the contract. And this was actually below, was they wanted me to go into the firing line of a housekeeping team and convince them they had to use this software. The great thing is, being Portuguese, son of a head housekeeper, I dealt with it all my life. It was just like a normal day's life, to be honest. Like telling my mother, I'm taking away your clipboard and you're having an iPhone to clean your room. But we went through a whole process of that. And that model, someone said, you should do this more often, started doing, I helped a few more and so on. And then during the pandemic, I said, I would love to do this more. I love the software element. I love the operations can bring both together. And that's what EIP and the projects I've been doing recently, from helping people. I call it sometimes in a fun way, the boring tasks.
Yeah.
No tech provider wants to fill in an RFP, go through all the information. No tech provider, the sales team want to educate the team because they have the pressure to move to the next sale. And sometimes, like in everyone else in the industry, we're all suffering from lack of staff. So there's someone that comes in and unify that through communication or due diligence, process this project. So that's really where the conception of EIP comes from. And it's now 2 years and a bit. And so far, so good. I'm still alive to tell the story. So
all right. And I hope so. Congratulations. You already dove into a bit of your core services, what really does set you apart as a company. You mentioned the pandemic, you mentioned COVID, and I think thankfully we're past that. And so I guess it's no surprise, hopefully, to anyone that we're seeing this resurgence in global travel. I'm curious as to which emerging international hotel markets that are catching your attention right now and why they're kind of so important to the industry. Where should we be paying attention?
So I think we should stop talking about COVID or the pandemic. I said this for a reason. Not in a bad way. I think the industry used COVID, that change that's so needed. That was so needed.
Yeah.
The industry has always been antiquated in tech usage, in processes. It's been very much an antiquated industry. It is one of the oldest industries, of course, but it needed something to put it against the wall and say, you need to change. And I think COVID was that. However, at the same time, we're now facing shortage of employees, like in many other industries. Mm-hmm. But above all, what we are facing is a new type of employee, a new type of guest. So the demands, everyone is talking about the guest journey. I believe that we should also be talking about the employee journey, which has just become just as important.
Yeah.
The element of education in our industry needs to change. It's sad to say that the industry is seen as entry points to someone arriving in a new country. You go and clean, you go and serve. We have doctors, we have some of the most highly educated individuals serving food in a coffee shop, in a restaurant, somewhere, in a hotel somewhere. So I think we need to look at that first of all. Second of all, emerging markets for me, I believe the world is going east. We've gone west for so long, I think we're going east. And it's the same thing with economies. We always look at economies in a kind of 10-year circle. We know there's another kind of recession coming along or a crash or whatever. Civilization, hospitality-wise, is going through that circle going east, where the sun is rising from. We're looking at the travel coming out of China, and I spoke with a friend of mine recently who deals with social media in China for the hospitality industry, and the luxury demand is totally different. What's coming out of China is not just about the Chinese market coming in to buy the Louis Vuitton, the Prada bags in Italy, and then flying off to Disney and doing the massive resorts in LATAM. Nothing at all. It's the experiential traveler now, really trying to do the different things. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and I've been fortunate enough to visit, we thought that Dubai was crazy, but then again, everyone thought that Vegas was crazy when you read historically. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is something out of this world. And I say this for a reason. Being from one of the oldest countries in Western Europe, Portugal, we kind of like to go back to the foundations where the bureaucracy is not there and health and safety is not there, and look at the impossible and do crazy things. The architecture alone, and having a country like the Kingdom where you have from snow to rock to sand to sea. Developments like Red Sea Global, The Line, PIF, Private Investment Fund, bringing what they are building. Jeddah as a mecca for sport, not a mecca for in the sense of the traditional, let's say, religious holidays. But even so, you do have everything in one country. Yeah. And let's be honest, half of the buildings may have not been built in America, in the UK, in Europe, because of the red tape that our countries now run through. So to see that is one thing. However, what is mostly amazing me is people talking about hospitality as a career again in those countries.
Okay.
But different, not just the location, about the data. So I've just listened today, not because of this, I've missed out last week on FHS because I was in HTNG Connect Europe. So I listened to a lot of the recordings was data is the new oil. To have that phrase said by the Ministry of Tourism of Saudi Arabia, it's something that makes you think twice.
Oh, yeah.
I think the misconception is like, and I'm going to say this and use our two countries. You go to Portugal, you get cod, you get custard tarts. You go to Mexico, you get avocados. No, you get humans. And I think understanding that human being for me is more and more important to go into those markets. First time I was in Mexico, like I mentioned to you, is when I went plant-based, and to have the little lady at the resorts, and I shouldn't name them because they deserve a prompt here, because at the Escarret Resort, when we're installing hot sauce and so on, and she recognized I wasn't eating the good stuff, as I call it, because I miss it, but at the same time was looking after me for the whole week as I was there working. I wouldn't learn that from a book. I think everyone's trying to learn from books about the etiquette of going to the kingdom, to go to Dubai, to go to Mexico, to go to Portugal. There's two things that we need to be doing. We're not going to go and meet someone who wrote that book. We're going to meet human beings. So why not go and explore those human beings, go open-minded? We work in the most diverse of industries.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who's visited a country different than their own has experienced some level of culture shock, I think, at one point or another, or a lot of points or another. I mean, as someone who's visited other countries, and also I live in a country that's not my own, right? I have 20 years almost as an expat. I definitely understand the cultural nuances. I can see how that's central to hospitality. Wondering why it's so crucial for hotels, hospitality businesses, technology companies to also understand and adapt to these nuances, to these people, especially in the markets that you mentioned. I think that can be so drastically different from what we're used to living in, dealing in. Can you give some of these examples of how these nuances are maybe impacting business deals, guest experience?
I think the brands get stuck too much on what they want to deliver. The larger brands, especially with the loyalty programs and the expectations that they've built over the years, they haven't changed. Loyalty programs have not really changed that much. So they sell the idea of this, that, the other. So when someone arrives, I'm really sorry to say, I don't want a Hilton in Dubai to be the same as a Hilton in New York or a Hilton in LA. I want a Hilton to feel as a local Hilton. Well, I'm going to the brand is for different reasons. If you want to travel to have fish and chips everywhere in the world, stay in England. You get it there, right? That's my normal saying. I know it's very direct as an approach, but I want to go into the Hilton in Riyadh and get a lovely Arabica coffee, sit down for a meze, be introduced to the local culture and find warmth, because you go to experience as a traveler, as a business traveler. And I appreciate it's hard to train a sales team to sell in an environment when you don't have the time or the money as a company to send everyone there for months on end to learn. However, the beautiful thing about our industry is we move around. I've had the pleasure of working in 5 continents now. We should be asking our peers. We should be asking ourselves in these, like you are doing here today, and what do you need? How do you do when you travel? And don't assume. I think we know what assuming means. We can't say it out loud, maybe too early on the podcast, on the live podcast, but
go for it.
Well, we all know what it means. The word itself, split a few dashes in there and you got it all in there. But it's that kind of environment that we need to be asking more. we also need to be looking at what hospitality is. Don't worry about changing your hotel for a new culture coming in, because that culture may want to learn about your culture. And I think that's sometimes a mistake. We try to adapt a hotel so much. If I'm going to Mexico, I want to experience Mexico. I don't want them to have Portuguese custard tarts on the menu. I get that at home.
Right. And probably better at home, to be honest.
Well, I can't eat them, to be honest. I go to vegan ones, but that's a conversation for another day. But you have that at home, right? So look at that. Yes, understand certain elements, the fine-tuning of that, i.e., from a Japanese client, your new business card, how do you hold it? Sit down for someone for a coffee, how important it is to that business deal instead of trying to rush it. Where to wear a tie, where not to wear a tie, where to wear jeans, in fact, and not jeans.
Wow.
Levi's sometimes need to stay at home. That is. Do you wear shorts even as a male in some things? Oh, this is discrimination. No, it's not. It's local costumes, and people adapt to you. And if you show respect, if you learn good morning and good evening, just where you're going, that goes such a long way to do so. If you don't drink, and that's really, I think that's one of the things. The Middle East, for example, I call it the TCT treatment. It's time, coffee, and trust. Sit down, learn, because we work in an industry that everyone gets shouted at, everyone gets told what to do. How many times do they get listened to? So if you want to learn their culture, listen to the individual, look at the individual, observe. We have eyes, right? I know it sounds basic. I was trying to look for some books to recommend to our listeners. To be fair with you, books get outdated faster now than anything else. So social media is key. If you look at social media, and if you look at a lot of us out there, they'll show you. Don't look at the person speaking. Look at what's around them. How are people are dressed? How are they communicating? How are they doing a handshake? How are they greeting each other? They appreciate the understanding. Don't expect to be like a local either. Be respectful to the local. Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the key mistakes. If you come in and kissy, huggy, it's like, hold on, but we just met. So there is an element of build the trust and then get to that level and amazing. That's even in business format. Because there's one thing in certain cultures and where you live, where I live, if someone invites you to your house, that's a sign of respect. Breaking bread, as colloquially speaking, is one of the highest signs of respect.
And you dare not say no. Dare not say no.
Oh, yeah. I've actually, this is a true story. I took a former colleague of mine to my parents' house. My father produces olive oil. Obviously, as any Iberian table, it gets set immediately. And I said to him, even if you're not hungry, you eat. And he went, why? Because my mother will kill me if you don't. And then she'll kill you. She'll kill me first. And it's that kind of, it's a joke and it's banter, but at the same time, it's the truth. I worked with a company before I left the UK. We went to Dubai for a deal, and the contract did again sign in the end because the sales manager refused to meet with the signatory after 8 p.m. I appreciate in the UK, that's fine. The offer was dinner.
That's the business. This is when business is happening.
That's the point. And I think there is that element of the same as in Spain, you don't have dinner before 9 p.m. because it's too hot and so on. In other cultures, are just the same. They're not different. The culture and nuances is that, unfortunately, the pressure and the stress of our industry, sign, sell, get this room night, get this revenue. If we carry on doing that, the human beings won't be there because we're pressuring them and pushing them away. But if we listen to them, they'll bring it without having to pressurize them. They'll keep on selling for you and be an extension of your sales force. If you're a supplier or a loyal guest, will recommend you to their family if you're a hotelier. And I think that's where you need to be as a human being in this industry. Learn their pain points.
Absolutely. And a few things that you talked about, you mentioned, not wanting to mention books because they do get outdated quickly. Although I'd say there's probably some things that are relatively classic. One of my favorite books on this topic is by Erin Meyer. It's called The Culture Map. And I think she does some great things, and maybe that shifts and things. But, for me, even if my takeaway is not memorizing every single culture, where it lands on the scale, or how I compare. Am I a direct communicator? I'm American, so I'm always going to be the direct communicator. But is this going to be trust based, or is this going to be task based, or whatever? But the biggest key for me was just learning to take a step back and, like you mentioned earlier, not assume, and just simply ask the question, could this be cultural? Because I think a lot of times we assume, right, that someone is being unkind, being disrespectful, or whatever it might be, when actually it's just different, right? And another saying that I kind of adhere to is, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different, right?
100%.
Not to lean into morality too much, but there are things where it's like, just accept it, just like take, and I think those are, if anything, those are the things worth walking away with.
100%. And I think I'm fortunate to live in Europe. I say fortunate because where I am at the moment, I'm in a small triangle. I've got Hungary across the border, I've got Slovenia in the south, and you have an element of 3 different cultures in a way. And everything's Central Europe. We can't just do this paintbrush over cultures. We put in our flags down, we put in our tech down, and it works. I think by learning this, one of the things that we also need to do is not just culture, as human beings. The tech provider that's provided to the industry, how can my product work in these industries and recognize those human beings on how they work? A direct German to a 35-hour French to a Spanish that works late. It's the truth. That's the industry. That's the beauty of our industry. The differences that we have from country to country. And obviously in some countries, admittedly like the US, East to West Coast, super different. The same in Australia, or if we go to larger countries in the East as well. And I think that's what we need to do, is accept those and enjoy them. Because it's the famous kind of Parisian scene. You sit in a coffee area and you just watch people walk. People watching is one of the most amazing things when you travel, when you get the opportunity in our industry, because you learn so much of what's happening, the routines, never order a cappuccino after breakfast in Italy and so on. Maybe I drink espresso, so it doesn't matter. But I think learn that and be immersed in it, because whatever you can learn, as soon as you listen to the people, how they act, react, the speed that they conduct their day-to-day lives, it's so different to when it comes to delivering that perfect guest experience, and also understanding the employee experience, what they're going through at the same time. Personally speaking.
Absolutely. Coming back to this emerging market, you specified the East, more specifically Saudi Arabia. In these markets that you're focusing on and encouraging others to focus on, and we touched a little on some of the cultural nuances, but what especially should hoteliers be paying attention to, and help maybe not ensure? I think ensure is a really strong word, but at least get closer to meeting expectations, that might be country or region specific. Like, at least what are some of the top, like, this is going to be different, this is going to be different, this is going to be different?
Sure. I think one of the things you have is the impact. Obviously, there are countries in the world that are more heavily orientated towards religion. So you have to accommodate that. And that comes to your staff management. Deal with a staff management way of working that can accommodate that. The other thing you have is also ensuring the legalities and the data protection laws. Sounds crazy, but every country brings different. And that's not just to do with new emerging markets, but new emerging markets are learning from the mistakes that the older hospitality markets have made. So that's going to be key on new emerging markets. It's one of the things I'm seeing at the moment, is the protection. They make their own data. Hence the reason Saudi keeps on saying data is the new oil. Vision 2033 in Dubai is the same thing. It's all about data. So that needs to be addressed tremendously. You have an issue of when it comes in, they don't expect a Hilton room, a Novotel room, a Marriott room, any brand at all, or even a private room to be the same as anywhere else in the world. So they want you to understand them. They want you to spend time with them before you go in as a new hotelier. We're seeing more and more involvement from local Ministry of Tourism, local historians being involved, which is brilliant. yes, there is a lot of modern buildings. There's these wonderful stadiums that we all see on a Saturday night when we look at our sports channels from the kingdom, but there is a lot of history being delivered. The service element out of it needs to be addressed at all points. And I think the new emerging market, and I'm seeing that in other areas as well, starting to come out. Austria has announced recently on hospitality, a lot of focus on local remote areas using the ski resorts as well as for summer and spring resorts as well, where they want to bring in a different type of tourism as well. So I think that they don't expect you to deliver a one way forward, but really understand the seasonality of the tourism, of the traveler, of the needs, and invest as well in the local, not just by putting a hotel there, but invest in the employee. There's standardization is taking place where a certain level of employees need to be locals. So you are, how can we say, recommended to invest in the education system, to invest in the human beings around you, not just your property as a hotelier. I think that's very key. And I think that, again, is bringing hospitality to a career focus instead of just an entry level in and out. And I think that's important for our industry because we have lost that in the West to a certain extent, where you've got the end users are in and out. My first job in the UK when I arrived from Portugal now is straight into a hotel. I stay there for 3 months, look at the next hotel that pays me a bit more, and so on. So that attrition needs to stop, and Saudi's trying to curb that by looking at profiles, education. There's certain of the larger brands, even US brands, in fact, are usually investing in local colleges as well, so, which is nice to see. They not just, we're putting so many bedrooms here. No, they're actually investing and working with the local tourism, and even with the United Nations World Tourist Organization as well to develop programs and so on. So I think that's the initial steps.
I love it. Very, very good advice.
Silver bullets. I think silver bullets are going away from our industry. The usual connotation of I'll put a tower here, and we saw that in many resorts around Europe, and I'll make money straight away. I think it's becoming a long haul. The new emerging markets are looking at hospitality as more of a long haul business to replace other industries. We saw in Dubai a little bit, in the UAE, and we're seeing that across the Middle East. But I think there's going to be areas of the world that are going to be doing the same, from what I gather.
All right, you heard it here with Custódio Barreiros of EIP Everything is Possible, MGT. You know, as we come to the final few minutes of our conversation today, I'm just wondering if you have any last final big piece of advice for those entering the international hospitality space, and of course, where our audience can connect with you to learn more about EIP MGT.
Sure, I'll answer the part of the question first, because it's easy. Normal LinkedIn. With a name like mine, you can't really go wrong. There's not that many of me around. My website, eip-mgt.com. And of course, you'll find me on X, Twitter. I apologize. I'm nearly 50, so I still call it Twitter. On Instagram as well. You'll find the EIP MGT on all the channels there. Okay. I think one of the things that the international markets are demanding is that we understand the human beings. Guest experience are lovely and they to be delivered, but the guest experience is no longer just a period from you come in the door and you exit the door. The whole preparation for a trip in a business, leisure, however we call it, to the moment you return again to the location is now the guest experience. So I think the elements of that, we are seeing elements of our industry who are suddenly becoming very tech savvy, which weren't, and they refused to, as long as they could. Les Clés d'Or, the Golden Key Association, you've seen the dedication that they are taking to learn technology, to learn communication with the new guest. So I think we definitely need that to bring that forward and see that. The hotels need to see, really, where are they going to differentiate? i.e. the human that delivers the experience to the human that arrives to experience the experience. If those two humans are not happy, if you don't support your employee, he or she will not have that smile to deliver a smile to your guest. So you have to think on two experiences that work side by side, happy, that is.
Absolutely beautiful. I have to say, it was a direction that I did not expect the conversation today to go, and I'm absolutely pleasantly surprised because you were absolutely right. that our people are just as important, maybe even more important than the guest who is walking through the door. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom today, Custódio. Please hang on just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, I would like to remind our guests that we've got another great show coming up tomorrow. We hope, weather pending. God bless everyone that's in Milton's path. But if not, we will move the conversation to a later day and time. But we're hoping to be able to kick off our two-part series with Greg Hopkins, who is the founder and president of Get Hoppy Consulting. He's going to be talking about revolutionizing the guest journey. This time, the first conversation from inspiration to pre-arrival. So we'll see you here, hopefully, tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific at Dojo Live. Thank you again, Custódio. A pleasure.
You're more than welcome. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.